The courtroom was silent, so silent you could hear the heavy ticking of the old clock above the judge's bench. The air was thick with judgment and pity, and all eyes turned to the frail little girl standing barefoot on the cold floor. Her hair was unkempt, her dress torn, and her small hands trembled as she looked up at the paralyzed judge in his towering chair. Then, in a voice that carried both innocence and power, she said, "Please, sir, let my dad go free. I'll heal you." A wave of laughter erupted in the room. Lawyers chuckled under their breath, reporters shook their heads, and even the bailiffs smirked. To them, it was ridiculous. An absurd plea from a desperate child. How could a poor girl, barely 10 years old, heal a man whose legs hadn't moved in years? But the girl didn't flinch. She looked straight into the judge's wary eyes, and something about her gaze silenced the laughter. To a father's fall from grace. Her name was Leela, and her father, Thomas Gray, was a mechanic in a small town that had long forgotten mercy. He had once been an honest man, working day and night just to feed his little girl after her mother passed away. But when the factory he worked for shut down, desperation led him down a dark road. One stormy night, Thomas was accused of stealing car parts from a wealthy businessman's garage. The evidence was stacked against him. Tools with his fingerprints, a witness who swore he saw Thomas sneaking around, and a pile of debts that made him look guilty beyond question. The townsfolk whispered, "He's a thief." No one cared that he had once fixed their cars for free, or that he'd given away his own coat to a beggar during winter. And now, Judge Elias Morton, known for his strict and merciless rulings, was about to sentence him to prison. The paralyzed judge, Judge Morton, had once been a legend, a man whose judgments were feared and respected. But 2 years earlier, an accident on the highway had left him paralyzed from the waist down. His wife had left him soon after, unable to bear the burden. Since then, he'd lived with bitterness, his once kind heart turned cold. He ruled with iron logic, unmoved by emotion. But when Lila walked into his courtroom, barefoot, him trembling, something inside him stirred, a feeling he hadn't felt in years. The plea. When the prosecutor finished his argument, the judge asked if the defendant had anything to say before sentencing. That's when Lila stood up, clutching her father's worn cap. "Your Honor," she said softly, "my daddy didn't steal. He was fixing that man's car for free, 'cause the man promised to pay him later. But he lied. Please, please don't take my daddy away." The judge sighed. "Child, the law doesn't bend for tears." "But you're hurt," she said suddenly. "You can't walk, right?" A hush fell. The judge froze. "If you let my dad go," she said, "I'll heal you." The courtroom erupted in laughter. Some thought she was mocking him. Others pitied her. But the girl just stood there, her eyes shining with unshakable faith. To the miracle nobody expected that night, the story spread like wildfire. "The crazy girl who said she could heal a judge!" The news mocked her, and her father's case became the talk of the town. But Judge Morton couldn't sleep. Her words replayed in his mind. "I'll heal you." Something about her voice reminded him of his late daughter, who had died young. The next morning, against his assistant's advice, he called for a private hearing with Leela. When she entered his office, she carried a small jar of herbs and a tattered Bible. "Where did you get that?" he asked, amused. "My mama taught me before she died," Leela whispered. "She said healing comes from love and faith. I don't know if it'll work, but I can try." The judge sighed. "You can't fix what doctors couldn't, little one." "Maybe not," she said, "but I can pray for you." And so, with trembling hands, she knelt beside his wheelchair and began to pray. Her voice was soft but strong, every word soaked in hope. As she prayed, tears streamed down her cheeks. The judge felt something warm spreading through his body, something he hadn't felt since the accident feeling. He tried to dismiss it as imagination. When he moved his toes, just barely, they moved, he gasped. From pity to belief, news of the incident spread again, but this time people didn't laugh. The doctors confirmed it. His nerves had somehow started responding again. It wasn't an instant cure, but it was enough to shake the judge's soul. He called for a retrial. The evidence against Thomas Gray was re-examined, and holes began to appear. The witness was found to have been bribed by the businessman, who wanted Thomas blamed to cover his own theft. Within a week, Thomas was declared innocent. When the verdict was read, Leela burst into tears and ran to hug her father. The courtroom, once filled with scorn, now erupted in applause. The judge stood, on trembling legs supported by the bailiff. The crowd gasped as he looked down at the little girl and said, "I once thought the law was all about proof. But today I've learned it's also about faith." The aftermath months passed. Judge Morton began to walk again with the help of therapy, but he always said it wasn't the doctors who healed him. It was Lila's belief. He visited her often, helped her father rebuild his workshop, and even set up a fund for children in poverty. People in town changed too. They stopped judging the poor and started helping one another. Lila became a symbol of faith and compassion. A reminder that miracles don't always come from heaven. Sometimes, they come from the heart of a child who refuses to stop believing. To the message years later, when Lila grew up, she became a healer, traveling from town to town, helping the sick and broken. Every time someone asked how she learned to heal, she smiled and said, "I didn't heal that judge with herbs or magic. I healed him with something stronger, hope." And the people who heard her story never forgot it, because sometimes, all it takes is one voice, one child, one act of impossible faith to remind the world that miracles are real,